Hi, welcome to Chat Communications Happenings and Trends. We have a couple stories for you today, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. So, former employee of the Young Turks, Andrew Jones, has filed a lawsuit against the company claiming racial discrimination. Now, Andrew Jones, in his lawsuit, has claimed a few things that his white counterparts were treated substantially different from him. He's a Black man. For one, he mentions that he was told to do certain things and do have certain standards placed upon him that his white counterparts did not have to have or did not even have to undergo. Certain deadlines that kept changing, and so the expectations of his job and his performance continued to change and evolve. But his white counterparts received very kind of set instructions and set expectations as well, which made his duties quite difficult to perform. Additionally, he mentions that one of the persons of the company, I don't know if he has part ownership of the company or not, but he has said what he claims to be derogatory things about Black people in general, one of which he mentioned that was told to him by this individual that Black men in the South, particularly that are on their porches during the summer, are just being Black people for some reason. So he is claiming $75,000 in the lawsuit for punitive and compensatory damages. Plus, this will plus covering attorney's fees and litigation costs. He says that he was told to basically resign. They were to give him a severance package when they presented him with this information, the TYT network. But part of the deal in that severance package was that he was not allowed to file a lawsuit against the network, against claiming racial discrimination or anything along those lines if he had accepted this particular severance package. He declined, and so was subsequently fired for not having claimed the severance package. In this article, which is from where did I get this from? Something with a V. We'll link it below later. But in this particular article, they mentioned that, I don't even remember where I was going now. I got stuck on where I was getting this article from.
It was Variety, just so you know, Variety.
Oh, thanks. It's for Variety. Thank you. In this article, let's see, what were they saying? I don't even remember what I was going to say about this article, but definitely check it out because it's interesting. But oh yeah, that Cenk Uygur, who owns the network, CEO of the network, did not decline to comment, basically, which legally I would imagine that would probably be the smarter thing to do. I had actually heard about this this former employee's claims, Andrew Jones. I've heard about this before earlier this year. He had filed a complaint with the New York Attorney General or something along those lines. Basically just a claim, filing a complaint of racial discrimination. And I think it's interesting. I really don't know all of the specifics or anything like that went down. I remember seeing him on the network all of one time, I think. I don't know if he was just, he did write some articles for the network. They were posted on the network as well. He was supposed to have a certain budget to travel the country or do whatever his duties were for reporting, for kind of visual media reporting, and they did not give him his budget that he was promised. So he was unable to carry out those duties. So it's kind of difficult if you're not given the tools to do your job. And we all kind of have probably been in that situation. I sure have, where, you just can't do something because you don't get the right tools, but eventually they do give you the right tools, and then they don't fire you because you didn't do the job, because they understand that, hey, she didn't have the tools she needed for her job. I think it's interesting that his kind of duties and his expectations, not his, but the expectations of the company upon him continue to change and fluctuate. And so when you don't have a defined role, when you don't have a defined goal, it's really hard to meet your target if you're not told exactly what it is that you need to do, or when you're told that it continue, or they continue to change that goal. So I can understand at least him being upset about the situation. I don't know if any of his white counterparts did experience the same things that he has alleged in this lawsuit. I think that it needs to be a little bit more overt as far as like racial discrimination is concerned. I think at some point he did mention something along the lines of him feeling a bit like he was undergoing some sort of harassment. I don't know. I've been reading a lot of these lately, so it could be someone else that I'm thinking of. But it's complicated. This is a complicated issue because I know that the burden of proof often is on the person, the complainant, right? And you have to have evidence supporting your claim. So you have to have, evidence showing that you were given for instance, and he's not alleging this, but that you were given a lower salary for the same job and the same duties and the same experience than a white person or your white counterpart in the same role. You have to have that evidence available, and you have to show via text messaging, via email, written. A lot of the time it has to be written or it has to be witnessed. And I don't, in this article, it doesn't mention that anyone is necessarily supporting his claims, but it also at the same time, didn't mention that no one is not backing his claims. And so we don't know kind of the details there or what evidence he does have to present to the table. But as it stands, just based off this article alone, I personally don't see racial discrimination. And I could be wrong. I'm sure that someone else would probably see it. Somebody making an offhand comment about Black people sitting on a porch. I just don't see how that's derogatory. Maybe just calling them poor is derogatory, unless they are poor. I don't know. I'm conflicted by this one. I don't want anybody to be left out of the system and out of the process and feel in any way that they have been discriminated against. But I just don't see it personally. And let's see what our chat has to say about this. Maybe they see it. Sorry, y'all.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
That there is this thing about the porch that was a derogatory thing.
Yeah.
Black people. So it could just be the two together, like the Poe and the porch. I maybe that's how he's taking it.
But I mean, if you've been to the South, Black people sit on their porch.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Like, I'm not kidding. I mean, I lived in Black neighborhood for a long time, and that's what they did. That's what we did. I mean, I don't know if they were poor or not poor. I think that would be the more derogatory portion of the statement. But it'd be 100 degrees outside, and you see like your old Black guy sitting on the porch and be like, "Hey, hey."
Trying to, there's actually a derogatory name that they use, porch, and then something else after, and maybe he's kind of.
He's alluding to that.
That's maybe what he's thinking. I don't know. That's all I could think of when I read it. So,
right, it's possible. I don't know. I don't know. It's complicated. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, if he definitely said the derogatory term, by all means, absolutely. But it's complicated because I know that one of their producers on there has been a member of the show for a long time, and I don't know if he would back up the claims or not for this particular individual who said that. How is he associated with the Young Turks at all? Collar, David Collar. Is
Um,
that who it is? Publicly known for making racist comments, referring to less affluent Black people in the South who relax on their porch on hot summer days as Black people just hanging out in the heat. I don't know his particular role, David Collar. Head of HR? I don't know his particular role, but I think that he, if he was responsible for the firing or the termination of this particular employee, absolutely. Especially if it, as you said, Janet, if it was alluring to kind of the other aspect of this particular comment, which would have been more of a derogatory or racist remark. But yeah, I think the more derogatory portion personally is like calling them poor, because you don't know their wealth status at all. I just, anybody sat on the porch. It does just what you do in the South. You sit on the porch. I did it for a long time until I couldn't stand the heat. It's just what you do. Let's see. What now?
People do it here too. So, in the cities and stuff, like you don't have a yard, so you sit out on your porch. That's what they do.
Yeah. And it shouldn't necessarily mean that you are poor or not poor. It's a thing. Lori Eld, sorry if I mispronounced your last name, says, I stopped watching TYT, The Young Turks, over a year ago. They are phony and all they care about is money and the limelight. Yeah, it may be. I personally have not stopped watching them because I think that I like to see different perspectives from like a whole range of media, and I like to get what their take is on a certain situation, and then I'll go to somebody that's actually quite progressive and see what their take is, and that way I can kind of see like, do I see any of these points here? I think it helps keep me a little bit more rounded as far as my perspectives are concerned. I did notice, I'm not going to lie, I did notice when they got that funding, a large shift in kind of their reporting and what they, how they approached a situation. I also noticed that they did this drive to basically get more field reporters and more things like that. And I don't see a lot of that. I just don't. I don't see a lot of that in the country at all. I think the biggest thing that they had going for them, as far as that was concerned, was Jordan Sheridan, who had gone to Flint over and over and over again to assure that became a major issue, who went to Donna Brazile and basically called her out for the emails and got her to admit on camera that, yeah, they were legit emails and things along those lines. So that, I think, was very important work that they were doing. And I wish that once they terminated him, they had replaced him. And it doesn't seem to me that they had effectively replaced that role or that position. I know that they have the political channel that they do reporting on from time to time, but that's solely political. It's not really going into kind of these neighborhoods or how Americans are actually living, which was an interesting perspective to see, because you don't see that on any media, how Americans live, how people in Flint are suffering. And people are suffering all over the country, and it's never being reported upon. And so I really miss that aspect of this channel. I think they lost a lot of my support for them when that they did not replace that role. I think it was a loss. And they had to replace him because there was an alleged sexual assault, I think, against him. And that's why they replaced Jordan, or they didn't replace Jordan. That's why they terminated him. Cappuccino Conservative says it's like saying chicken and watermelon. I don't know what that means. Is it kind of like making the stereotypes? Is that what I think that's maybe what you're going with that? It's stereotyping Black people, particularly Southern Black people. Okay. Does anybody want to call in and discuss this particular story? Again, the number is 508-534-8255. 8585 if you want to give us a chat. Yes, that works. But yeah, so that's what's going on with them. We don't know how that's going to play out, or how the law is going to be this. If there was an instance of racial discrimination, I really hope that they hash it out and that he wins. Because like I said, nobody should ever have to go through anything like that. I think it's questionable that his role continued to change, or his description, or his or what the goals that they were placing upon him continued to fluctuate without really any sense or meaning. Again, it seems very intentional at that point. They did want him to resign. That's why they offered the severance package. But then when he refused to take it, they fired him. So got to take it as you can. I can't hear you, Alan. I'm yelling. Can you hear me? Is what he says. Okay. I guess we don't have any callers. So we'll move on to our next story. So as you know that Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez has had a recent victory in New York, in the Bronx, where she basically won the primary over Joe Crowley. Joe Crowley has been not very good to his constituents, to say the least. Anyway, she won an astounding victory there. I think it was by 15 points or something like that. So she basically, she obliterated him, to say the least. Anyways, Joe Crowley ended up back on the ballot as a third-party candidate because of the Working Families Party. Now, the Working Families Party had endorsed Joe Crowley over Alejandra, which caused him to move to a third-party position once the initial Democratic primaries had completed. And so he is still, as far as I know, on the ballot, even though he could easily say that he lives now in Virginia, because, I mean, does he really live in the Bronx? No, his children go to schools in Virginia. His wife lives in Virginia. He lives in Virginia. So he could easily claim that he lives in Virginia. And that's one way to get off the ballot. Another way he could easily get off the ballot is just say, I absolutely have no intention of running. I will not run, and please remove me. And then the Working Families Party would go through the process to remove him from the ballot. They actually had reached out to him on Twitter and asked him if he wanted to be removed, and that if he did, they would go ahead through that process, of which he basically said no, that he would stay on the ballot. Now, a lot of people on the left, the real left, have been saying, like, we should open the door for third-party candidates because it would allow for more insurgent candidates to basically come into power, and more candidates of the people come into power. Now, in this instance with Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez, that system that was designed to make sure that people like her stayed out of the process or did not win failed. And now Democratic Party seems all about those third candidates. That's kind of weird. And what happened to unity? What about, like, all those people that were like, Bernie Sanders didn't endorse Hillary Clinton in time. He was, trying to be a third-party candidate. He's not a real Democrat, and all of these things. And then you have Joe Crowley running on a third-party ticket. Anyways, today, was it today? Let's see. We have Joe Lieberman has weighed in on this situation, and he wrote for the Washington Journal about maybe people shouldn't vote for Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez. They should definitely select Joe Crowley over her. He basically has said in this piece that Congress, America, and the Democratic Party will hurt if Joe Crowley does not win. And he also goes on to say that the policies that Alejandra supports and ran on are too far from mainstream. They would hurt the country. But if you look at the polling data, if you break down issue by issue, you see that Alejandria is pretty mainstream. 60% of people want a Medicare for all universal single-payer healthcare system. Over 90% of people want money out of politics, for instance, which she supports. She basically ran on a no money corruption campaign. You have about 80+% of people want sensible gun legislation, and all these things that she has run on, and that she continues to support are quite mainstream, if not directly down the middle. Yet Joe Lieberman, big supporter of the Iraq War, big supporter of these wealthy tax cuts, is saying that she is too out of the mainstream. She's too extreme in her views and her support of particular policies, which Joe Lieberman is a joke, by the way. He goes on to say that she's more of a socialist than a Democrat, that, going with the Red Scare type of thing, socialism scary, that the federal spending for the policies that she supports would essentially bankrupt the country. Newsflash, we spent almost $3 trillion on a needless war, on an illegal war that Joe Lieberman supported wholeheartedly too. He was a very big proponent of this war. And this just blows my mind. Like, why would anybody listen to him? I hope nobody listens to him, by the way. And that she would ruin the policies that she supports would ruin the company, ruin the country, and bankrupt the economy. Well, first of all, the United States as it stands is super morally bankrupt. We do not have a healthcare system that works for everybody. We have a healthcare system that works for people that can afford it, so people that are rich. We have a system where people are working multiple jobs with no benefits, and are making, are barely able to afford, their one-bedroom apartment, or they're on assisted living. They have to have food stamps, for instance, and these guys are full-time employees that have to go through this. And he's talking about bankrupting the country. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be kidding me on this. Absolutely crazy. I mean, yeah. Oh, and he basically mentioned at some point in his diatribe about how bad Ocasio-Cortez would be for America, about the fact that we wouldn't be able to help fund people in Syria, for instance, and help them and send humanitarian aid to these areas, which, by the way, we bombed. So it's kind of weird to even bring up that argument. He brings up the argument about the abolish ICE movement, and she's all about abolishing ICE because of who they are. They are a rogue agency, essentially. They don't answer to anybody. And there have been well-documented abuses by ICE towards immigrants and against them. And yeah, they need to be abolished. They serve no purpose except to terrorize communities. That's all they do. And then I guess because he's anti-abolish ICE, that means he thinks that they're doing a great job, right? He hasn't heard anyone say that. He hasn't heard anyone say that. That's what he says in this piece, that he hasn't heard anybody say abolish ICE, which people on the left, the real left, by the way, have been saying that for at least a year, if not longer. And so that just shows you how right-wing the Democratic Party is as a whole. He's supposed to be a Democrat, Joe Lieberman. I mean, y'all, this is crazy. This is insane. Celeste Holmes says he's a money-grabbing piece of shit, and except for the fact of and except for the fact of war criminal George W. Bush, we're lucky he didn't become the vice president or the president, right?
Like with abolish ICE though, like people have been demanding ICE to be abolished since its creation. I mean, immigrant communities have been screaming it, and activists.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just fucking insane.
I mean, yeah, it's not.
Sorry, didn't Joe Lieberman actually switch parties?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did. So that goes to you further. Like, why would anybody that would be voting for this person, that would be voting in the election here, that are, Democratic leaning, left leaning people, vote for somebody that Joe Lieberman recommends? Right? I mean, he's recommending people vote for Joe Crowley.
No one in that district is gonna listen to fucking Joe Lieberman. Like that district is a hard blue. And again, she went like 15 points ahead. The Republican candidate has no funding. Like she's got this, but she's just gonna have to basically waste funds on trying to defend against Joe Crowley.
Yeah, so. And I think that's the point, right?
Yeah, and I mean the whole thing is so that she can't advocate for other progressive candidates, and she has to waste resources on him and not better candidates. So, I mean, the whole thing's just, I mean, it's obvious what it is,
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't want this to happen again, and it's likely to happen again with the candidates that Bernie Sanders and her are supporting.
Hey, Amanda, I have Aaron on the phone.
Okay. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, so just got into your show. It's a good progressive show. So as far as what you're reporting on and what you're doing, just appreciate you for that. So I just called basically to talk about Ocasio, and in regards to all the backlash that she's been getting, and of course this just goes in, into this one particular thing I'm seeing, and I don't know if you talked about this on your show or not, but I just want to, put it out there in the forefront, which is basically these narratives that is into the, body politic in regards to her, position. So, I would be on Twitter and people would just be attacking her, as you stated just before. Lieberman was saying how she was so extreme, and you have others calling her, a socialist and this and that. And all this ties into basically, different narratives that's been, in the American public, I guess, thought process in regards to what they see in her politics and what she talks about. And, the reason being would be, just because, like I say, the thoughts that people heard once they heard speak and the things that she says, which is old ideas, I would say, that, people think about, which basically just goes back to, things such as rugged individualism, Randyism, the whole McCarthyite, Red Scare type of tactics, the bootstrap, type of ideology, things like that. So when people would hear her, on the internet, see the different things she would talk about, I would hear people saying things such as, "Oh well, she's a socialist," or she wants the whole country to be a welfare," or this is not everybody, but just the main detractors, saying things like that. And as far as the healthcare, they would say, "Well, we have the best healthcare in the world," and this and that. That goes back to the American exceptionalism type of thought process, and just different things that they would try to bring up that has been been kind of indoctrinated into different people's mindsets for them to already push back on that. And basically these thoughts, these ideas aids and abet corporations and corporatism. Because if I'm thinking when I hear her speak, and I'm one of these people that, oh, well, she's a socialist, I don't want to have nothing to do with her. I don't support her, and therefore, by not supporting her, I'm supporting the corporations. So I just default to that. Which brings me to a couple of examples. Like a couple of years ago, as a matter of fact, when Ron Paul was doing the Republican debates, they was having a debate on healthcare, and one of the questions that was pointed to him about healthcare was, if a person doesn't have healthcare, do they just die in the streets and so on and so forth? And they had, large cheers from the crowd. This about, like I said, a couple of years ago, and basically Ron Paul was saying, well, people don't need the government to help anybody, and yada yada yada. He just went back to the whole bootstraps ideology of charity. People can help them do charity. So and these different ideas, basically, like I was saying, that it seems to be out there in people's minds. Old age ideas that makes people detract from her. And basically, my point is, in order to get more progressives in, the future, we basically have to push back against this ideology, or where it, minuscule, to where people know that, what they've been said is not true, and what she's talking about is actually a positive thing. And,
Right.
as far as that's concerned, what's your opinion on that, as far as people having these ideas in their head, in regards to, her ideas, and, a way, in different ways that we could push back against that, to where they know that that's positive, and therefore she'll have more support. So that's just my whole statement about that.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
I think that one of the I'm hearing a lot of background. Yeah. I don't know if that's but I'm still hearing it. All right, is it gone? Okay. So one of the things that at least in this piece that Joe Lieberman attempted to do, again, like you mentioned, was that kind of Red Scare tactic, the McCarthyism, saying the S word, socialism, right? And I think there's been an argument that I've seen people arguing lately over this, if people should address that socialism is actually good, communism is actually good, and then leave it at that. No. Or should people really focus on the ideas? Well, we should have a healthcare system that works for all of us. We should have a wage system that works for all of us. We should have housing that works for all of us. We should all be able to have access and have clean water without getting poisoned. And so if you run on these ideas, you can always obliterate whatever messaging is going to be said about you. Because these ideas are widely popular. They're very popular. Again, if you start using these partisan politics and start saying, I am more about the people, I am more about trying to run on the ideas that matter most to all of us. We should all be able to have college. We should all be able to afford college. We should all, if not have a completely free public college system that works for all of us, because we have a student debt crisis looming in the background that nobody seems to be giving a shit about. But people that are burdened by these things do care about them. I think that at some point we have to trust in some way the American people, and that this type of messaging will eventually reach them. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have all the odds stacked against you. You have a two-party political machine, and both of those parties are designed to maintain the status quo, and they're designed to basically work for the corporations, right? And so that is a hard thing to beat, but the message is getting through. It won't happen overnight, and you will see losses. Like, I think in California it was pretty much nearly a wash for a lot of progressive candidates, but the Democratic Party threw all of their money and backing in California because that was a that's a big state for them to have and to hold, right? And to maintain the status quo there is a good thing for them. But messaging is getting through. Nobody, the mainstream people, the Democratic Party did not see Alejandria coming. They were surprised by this. Of course, if anybody had been paying attention, people were like, yeah, she's got a good shot. She has a really good chance of winning.
Hey, Amanda, I have Mark on the line.
All right. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Amanda. Hey, Lauren. How you doing?
We're good. Thank you.
We're good.
Oh, okay. Oh, can Lauren hear me? Okay. All right. So I just want to tell you guys that I'm actually on the Cynthia Nixon texting team, and I'm texting people from around the states to convince them to vote for Cynthia Nixon. It's like a texting team similar to the phone banking, and I just started doing that. And then I just came to watch your guys' show before. And then after I watch your show, I'm going to continue to do that. So it's very interesting. First time, one of my first time getting into the whole political process. Reaching out to voters. Convincing them to vote for Cynthia Nixon, or voting for this candidate. And learning about the strategies. Who's the voters to reach out to, like the voters, the battleground states and everything, trying to learn all these strategies, that comes with politics, So it's amazing thing to learn, because I want to learn all of it. It's very interesting. I wouldn't be doing any of this, I Trump being elected got me into politics, and it got me so much into politics. That, in CUNY, I signed up. I'm going to major in liberal arts. I'm going to major in liberal arts and take political science. CUNY, they just accepted me on Tuesday. I got accepted to CUNY. I'm going to CUNY Kingsborough starting January.
Yeah, congratulations.
I'm going to be in liberal arts, and I'm going to focus on majoring in political science and learning all about the political field. And so this would never happened. So I'm glad that I'm involved in this stuff, and now texting and being involved in all that stuff, and it's a very interesting process to be involved in.
So Mark, let me ask you a question. Are you still there?
Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah. Well, you can hear me,
I was
right?
going to ask you a question.
Yeah, ask me a question.
So you're texting for Cynthia Nixon, right? To be governor of New York?
Yeah, I'm texting for Cynthia Nixon, the governor of New York, and I got like a funny text message. I got like a text message, someone saying, "Oh, what experience does she have besides being in Sex and the City?" So some people are just funny already. They have the typical responses, just like on Twitter. It's already fun already. So I can't wait to get back to that after I'm done with this. But it's really.
I was kind of going to ask what your sense was about her chances.
Your question was what?
What your sense was about her chances of winning? What kind of feedback you felt like you were getting? Was it mostly positive, or was it mostly negative?
I got like one positive, and then I got like a negative, or someone said they're voting for Cuomo. So I haven't done the whole thing yet, but I've gotten positive and I've gotten negative, but I haven't finished. I haven't done the whole thing yet, to see if I've gotten most positive and most negative, but I've gotten both responses so far.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, Mark, for your comment. So again, this is something that I wanted to that I mentioned before Mark started talking about I don't know how to end that echo, guys, was that some progressive candidates, they are here, but again, they've got a lot of odds stacked up against them. The two-party system is a machine. It is working against them. It will do everything they can to assure that their messaging doesn't get out, because when their messaging gets out and reaches the people, it is widely popular. And that's why I think that some of these losses, they hurt, and I've been disappointed by seeing these candidates fail, some of the candidates fail. But at the same time, I have to remind myself, this is, it's only been, a certain amount of time. And this may take a whole presidential election cycle to get progressive candidates through. And so I think we need to practice some patience as well and just do what you can. Sounds like, Mark, you're doing a good job with the texting, or at least starting to pick that up and finding kind of your own passions and where you feel like your strengths are and where you can help the most. And we just have to remind ourselves to be patient about this, because it's frustrating. But some good news is that as a Democrat, even Democratic voters, people that identify themselves as Democrats, on average, more want candidates like Bernie Sanders than Hillary Clinton. There was a poll out about that recently. It was like the majority of the party wanted candidates like Bernie Sanders. That's good news. That means that we aren't the people that have maybe exited, and that have gone further left or identify more left than Bernie Sanders. It's good to know that there are people, the majority of the Democratic Party are kind of with you. They're tired of this establishment, but they're given two options: the Republicans that are actively interested in killing them, and then you've got the Democrats that, they won't kill you, but they'll kill you slowly, type of thing. They'll kind of say that corporation Y can pollute the water, but just a little bit, right? And so you've got these two quote unquote opposing parties that really kind of have overlapping interests, that will do everything to assure that these candidates don't come through. But candidates are breaking through, and in such a short period of time too, which is another thing that's very positive. So you've got the majority of the Democratic Party with you, and then you have candidates that are breaking through despite all of the odds against them. People, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Hey, Amanda. I that's me coming in. I have Sammy on.
Sammy or Sammy?
Sammy.
All right, Sammy.
Hello?
Welcome to the program.
Oh, hey. Thank you, Amanda and Jen. So, yeah, there's just a delay here. All right. Hey, so I just wanted to try to watch and listen. I guess I should just talk on the phone here.
Yeah.
I just want, I missed a part of what you said, but I also caught, some of the stuff you said that I want to elaborate a little more on and drive home. I'm seeing a lot in the progressive movement of this idea, or kind of a desperation that the Democratic Party is operating in good faith, or at least hope that it's going to operate in good faith. It's not going to cheat. It's going to play fair and such. So this is not the case. I don't think it's not going to play fair. It's not going to. It's going to cheat. This issue with Joe Crowley, staying on the ballot and not being clear about if he's going to leave or still running and all this stuff. So this is just one of the, so many things that they do that they're gonna try to keep Alexandria out. And if she gets into the Democratic Congress, so I don't see a huge difference between the Democratic Party and the Democratic establishment. Some people think they're, different distinctions. I don't see a huge distinction there. So what happens is, if Alexandria does get into the party, I think she will still win, even with Crowley pulling all this crap. I think if she does get into the Democratic Congress, they're going to keep doing all this crap to keep her from passing legislation, to smear her. The media is going to smear her. So, I don't want to go on for too much longer, but, you had me on your show before, actually, and you know my position. I think we need a new party. That's just how I see it. And I think the Democratic establishment is basically the Democratic Party, and they're against us. They're not for us. They're not going to play fair. Right. They're going to cheat whenever they can, and they're going to keep out people like Alexandria. And if Alexandria gets in, they're going to try to change her, and most likely they usually succeed in changing the people like Alexandria who get into the party. Yeah. So that's basically all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Sammy, for your comment. I do appreciate it. And so I'm kind of two minds. I think that yes, if we can make a viable party, it's obviously going to take time, but it will involve a kind of a collaboration of understanding, right? An understanding that you won't get everything that you want, so there's going to have to be compromise, because you've got the communists that want something, you've got socialists that want something, and sometimes they don't have overlapping desires in directions that they want to see the country to go in. But I think they'll need to come together. Then you have the Green Party that don't want what the socialists want necessarily, but they want to see a green future. And so then so do the socialists, right? They have overlapping interests there. And so you have to find those overlapping interests and build a coalition based off of that. And then you can potentially have a viable third party. It's going to take a lot of different parties coming together. On the other hand, you have people that want to do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party by putting insurgent candidates in and having them win. I think that both of which are going to be insanely challenging. Both of which have, again, a lot of the odds stacked up against them, because you've got the establishment that don't want to see any of this happen. I think what's likely to happen, and it may take years for this to happen, and so I don't know for sure, but what I'm envisioning is something along the lines of the Democratic Party ends up becoming the new Republican Party, where they kind of recenter the country and to the right, like they recenter the right. And then you've got a new party that is a leftist party, as long as you don't have corporate interests coming in and basically obliterating them like the Koch brothers did with the Tea Party movement. They came in and bought them off, and basically they were establishment candidates again. Miraculously, how did that happen? And so I think that all of this can't happen without the removal of money in politics. That is the first thing that needs to go. And I'm concerned too, Sammy, about them smearing Ocasio-Cortez, because if she is the only one, there is no progressive caucus. If she is the only one, there's no progressive legislation being passed. And then they can go back and go, well, look how ineffective she was. She didn't pass anything. They'll do the whole Bernie Sanders smear on her about like, well, she was lazy in Congress. She didn't do anything. She didn't have anything passed. I'm concerned about that too, which is why I hope more progressive candidates are able to break through and actually build a progressive caucus that does create sensible, passable legislation for the left. Because at some point they've got to start appeasing the left base. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of leftists in the country. Again, the country actually leans left. And so it's remarkable to me that we've got these old crotchety people in Congress that don't represent anybody except for extremist right people, right? And then you've got maybe moderate Republicans, but they're still extremist in my mind, because these are the ones that were pro-Iraq war, pro-illegal war, pro-every war imaginable. And then they're like, I'm going to switch to the Democrats. I just can't believe that you've got people that are still holding on to the Democratic Party, knowing that, hey, look who's in your party. And they use the justification of, well, we're a big tent, but we're not going to allow Bernie Sanders. We're a big tent, but don't vote for Ocasio-Cortez. What happened to unity? You know, weren't these the same people that were like, we need to unify behind a candidate because we don't want the Republican to win? No, yeah, they do. They want the Republican to win. And that's unfortunate. Does anybody here care about the Trump and Putin meeting? That's what Jake Smith said. Brad Bloom responded no, but I'm going to say, yeah, I do care about that. I do care. Mark Anderson mentions that Ocasio is a fierce woman and a fighter, that he believes in her. Yeah, I think she has a good chance of winning. I think she will win, like Sammy mentioned. We're not really talking about Russia. But Celeste Home mentions, I'm sitting back and watching the Russia shit play itself out. I'm old, jaded, and cynical. I've been around for the CIA and FBI to do all kinds of shit. Yes. It's a complicated issue. And it's hard to know what's going on with that. I think that, here's the thing, and I think that a lot of people, for some reason, have forgotten this, and so I'm going to remind you, we weren't in a conflict with Russia prior to Trump at all, right? We didn't have the best relationship with Russia, but it wasn't the worst either. Nobody was going to war. Nobody was talking about fighting grounds on, or anything like that. I mean, it would be absolutely absurd to go in that direction with another nuclear superpower, which everybody happens to be concerned with, Russia. Not everybody, but a lot of the country is concerned about that. But remember, Barack Obama did not have poor relationships with Russia. They weren't healthy, but they weren't terrible either. There was none of this war talk. And so I think people have lost sight of that fact. And then people are like, well, we need to support Trump in these talks with Russia because we don't want to go to war with them. But we weren't going to war with them before. And so I'm utterly confused by that narrative, to be perfectly honest. And maybe my my good friends here can explain a little bit to me about this, because we weren't in bad relationships before. Then Trump came along and said, we are in terrible relationships with Russia. We're on the brink of war. So that's why I need to come in and talk to them and be their friend and things like that. And I'm all about good relations. Any type of peaceable negotiations are great. But I have to remind you, we weren't at war with Russia or even on the brink of war with Russia before. And so maybe somebody can explain this to me, because I don't get it. I just don't get it. And then everybody, again, I don't understand why Trump was able to capture that narrative of, well, we were almost on the brink of war with Russia when we were absolutely not almost on the brink of war with Russia. And so now not everybody, but some people are praising him to sit down and talk with Putin. Barack Obama sat down and talked with Putin many times, and they were closed door, but with interpreters and things like that were on the record. And then Trump gets to have off the record talks with Putin. I don't understand why. Shouldn't our government and our elected officials be accountable to the American people to where they don't hold off the record talks with anybody? It just makes no sense to me. That doesn't seem healthy. That doesn't seem like a healthy relationship. Either way, I'm skeptical, and I think we all should be skeptical. Despite what the FBI and CIA has to say, you have to judge people by their own actions too. And he is not acting like somebody in that knows what the hell they're doing. He is not acting like somebody who is not culpable in any way, shape, or form. You don't hold backdoor talks like this. You don't do that. You don't praise, a world leader or an elected, whatever he is. You don't praise a president and then disparage another that's supposed to be your intimate allies. That doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. I think like the whole world is fucked up right now. And I think that the best way, because he's talking about doing peaceable negotiations with Russia. Fantastic. But we weren't at war with them at first. So yay, go ahead and do that. But at the same time, why then are you saying let's not have peaceable negotiations with Canada or Australia or the UK or Italy or France? Like, we can all have peaceable negotiations and we don't all, it just makes no sense. Is anyone surprised that Russian spies did spy stuff? And that came from Plantastic Life. No, no one should be surprised by that. No one at all. Yeah, we aren't at war with Australia either. I don't know. Did somebody say we were? Nobody said we were, right? But either way, the thing is, and then you have Trump that are applying these tariffs under the guise of saying that countries like Canada are a security risk to the United States. How the hell is that the case? And that's just it just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, guys. At all. And so I am concerned by this. Yeah, do we have any other calls? Yeah, we need to probably sign off right at 8 to go to, because we were doing another thing. So yeah, I think that we should all have a healthy dose of skepticism with all of this stuff. But at the same time, judge people by their own actions. And he is not acting like an honest actor, in my view. All right. I think we are done for today. We started right on time, right? I don't hear any response from anybody.
Sorry, that was me. We did start on time.
Okay, great.
I can get my mic off. Oh, wait, someone's calling now. Hold on. Let's see who this is. We'll see it together. Hello? Who's calling?
This is Isha.
Oh, hi, Esha.
How are you?
We're gonna have to sign off soon because we have an interview coming up. But
okay, I have a quick comment.
Okay.
Occam's razor, because the media is hyperventilating. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since the Democrats are hyperventilating about Trump and Russia, he's just doing that to troll them right before the election, so that the few weeks before the election, they'll continue to hyperventilate like Pavlov's dog.
Yeah, I agree with that. Did you hear her, Amanda?
So because the media is hyperventilating about Russia, he's doing this on purpose to what? Have other Republicans win elected seats?
Just to,
he's not up for re-election yet, right?
No. But it's just to throw the game. You know.
No, I don't agree with that perspective. I mean, he does like, I guess, chaos and confusion and things along those lines. But at the same time, there's more effective strategies he could employ to help his colleagues win their seats. And I don't think that this is one of the better strategies to employ, personally.
Yeah, but do you really think that he'd employ good strategies? Like,
not really. But no, not really. It's
I feel like he's kind of trolling them because he knows that it throws their game. And
I mean,
like,
but what game is it throwing?
Well, like they're focusing on Russia instead of focusing on their campaigns and promoting.
But that also means that the focus is off of the elected official as well, when they should also be campaigning and saying that they're going to do X, Y, and Z and help their constituents or whatever they plan on doing. Right?
Trump has always liked to fuck with
campaigns
people.
off of every campaign, not just the Democrats, but also the Republicans.
And he probably doesn't care about Republicans either.
So he doesn't want anybody to win? I mean, I would imagine he would want more Republicans to win.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I'm just saying, like, Trump historically, like, you know, he likes to fuck with people. There's no strategy about it. It's just something he enjoys doing.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
does.
that's
He does like
sin.
to
That's
fuck
all
with
it
people.
is.
That's how I
Like, he has the brain of an internet troll. I mean, honestly.
I mean, he is an internet troll.
All right. We gotta go though.
Yeah, we do have to go. But thank you guys so much for calling. Thank you all for calling in, and thank you for your comments as well. I enjoyed reading them. We will be back next. Actually, when will we have the next interview available?
Oh, I'll have something definitely out tomorrow. I'm the when we do a SEMA, there's more I want to put to it. So I was working harder on that because it was just how the stuff came in. So I'm gonna add stuff to it. So we will definitely have something out tomorrow, and then probably the Poor People's Campaign out this weekend, or I can put it out Monday at the
Monday
latest.
would probably be better.
Okay, I'll put it out Monday.
We will have something out for you tomorrow, and we will also have a video available on Monday. So please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so, and make sure that you hit the bell so that when we do upload a new video or go live, you get notified so that you can be one of the first people to see our content. And also, if you have a moment or have $1 to spend, please consider donating to our Patreon page. We also have a PayPal that you can donate if you don't want to go through Patreon. And I think that those are going to be linked in the comments below or in the description box. That's all I have. So thank you guys so much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. It's ranked choice voting. That's what we're
Ranked
doing.
choice voting.
Bye. Talk to you guys later. Thanks.
Bye.